Hey, what's up guys? In this video, I'm going to be showing you how I set up my PyCharm IDE for development. Here you'll see I'm using the Community Edition, although at work I do use the Pro Edition just because we have licenses through the company I work at. And for anyone new to PyCharm, the Community Edition is free and it's considered to essentially be a pure Python IDE. So the Pro version has a lot of added support for other languages like JavaScript, TypeScript, and their various frameworks, as well as more advanced Python development support. But with that being said, if you do have access to PyCharm Pro at work, I would definitely recommend giving it a go. Otherwise, the free version works just fine with what I'm about to show in this video. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is virtual environments for Python projects within PyCharm. Traditionally, you would use a tool such as virtual env, and you would use it to create a directory within your project that would house your environment, right? And then you would kickstart the environment or deactivate it when you're done with the project. With PyCharm, there is a very easy and convenient way to set this up in a way that it'll automatically kickstart the environment every time you open up the project. If we head down to the bottom right corner, you can see that it says no interpreter. If we click into this, we can set the interpreter to just be one of our Python versions. But if we actually open up the settings, if we come up here to this menu, we would see all the interpreters that we have created or all of the virtual environments that we've created. So we don't currently have any visible here, but if we click here, then we have this window pop up and it's asking us if we want to add a Python interpreter. So it's a new environment. I'll ask you for the location where you want to keep it and then what kind of Python version you want to use. So I just click OK. And just like that, it's created a new virtual environment for me. So I just set OK. And you can see now in the project breakdown over on the left-hand side that we have a virtual environment directory, much like you would see if we had done this manually through the command line. So the cool thing is that PyCharm will automatically remember this for this project, and so anytime you open this project, it will kickstart this environment. Alright, so next up I'm going to talk about the theme that I like to use for PyCharm. And like most editors, we have a dark theme and a light theme as defaults, and I much prefer the dark theme, but even so, I prefer something that has a little bit more color to it, it's a little bit brighter. So if we head over to Preferences again, and we hop into Plugins right here, we're going to search directly for this theme, and it's called One Dark Theme. There are obviously a lot of different themes that you can install, but this is the one that I like the most. And I don't know if you guys have used Atom before, but this theme specifically comes from Atom. It was one of Atom's default themes, which I really enjoyed while I was using Atom a few years ago. So yeah, I really like this theme, and it's what I use within PyCharm as well. So we're going to just install this. So this is what it looks like with the theme. It's still dark, but the code stands out more. It's a bit brighter and more colorful without being too overwhelming. And you can also notice a difference between the actual window that I'm in and then the left window. It's a bit darker over on the left, which I kind of like that contrast as well. And we're going to see how there's a few plugins that you can add to make this theme even better, depending on your preference, of course. But yeah, just this small update is great. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is CodeTogether. And this is a really cool plugin that basically allows you to live share your IDE and whatever you're coding for a particular session. So you can create a session and share that with other people, so other developers in your team, for example, and you can all code together. Starting a session is super easy. You basically just click Host New Session within the CodeTogether window, and we'll see that in a second. You can invite guests to a session by simply sharing out a URL that gets created for you when you create a new session. And then joining a session is super easy. You can either use that URL in the browser and access this through the browser, which is really cool. Or if you want to code directly through your IDE, you would use that URL within the plugin itself inside of your IDE, and you can code alongside whoever's hosting that session. So once the CodeTogether plugin is installed, you'll be able to see it over on the right-hand side of the editor. And you get this window where you can see host new session or join remote session. So if we click into host, this pop-up appears and just gives us a list of settings that we can select or deselect for the session that we're going to be creating. A really interesting one, for example, is the editing. So either everyone can edit the files or only you can edit the files. So basically you're driving the session. Maybe you want to have other developers on there seeing what you're doing or providing feedback, but not necessarily coding or editing anything. Once you've created the session, now you have a URL that you can access. Copy this URL, and now we can paste that URL directly in the browser, and it'll ask us what theme. So that's pretty cool. So you can see it's pretty much like a replicated version of the IDE in the browser. And then of course, if we want to just join within our IDE, we can click on this join remote session. And then we would just paste the URL up here, select our name like we did in the browser, hit OK, and then we would enter the session. Up next is GitToolBox. And as you can see back in the plugins window in the search box, I've looked up this plugin. And this is a plugin that is amazing if you use Git. PyCharm already has a Git integration built in, but this extends that with additional features. And this is one of my favorite plugins. So the main features that I want to talk about here are Git status, blame, and auto fetch. All right, we have to restart the IDE. All right, so the first of the three is Git status, and this feature is essentially a status bar widget that displays information about the status of the project with regards to the origin. You can see the number of ahead and behind commits. So we can see the Git status up top. We can see that we're on the master branch and we're one commit behind because I just changed something in the code. We can also see this information in the bottom right corner, which brings us to auto fetch. This feature is really useful as well. Essentially, there's a git fetch command that is executed in the background on an interval so that you always have access to the most up-to-date code. So you don't have to continuously type this command into the command line. And finally, we have git blame, which lets you know who has worked on what recently. So if I click anywhere in this code, you can see there's a username, a date, time, and the commit message. So it'll let you know exactly who worked on what. So if you're trying to fix a bug or you're just trying to get more information on something. And this is incredibly useful when working on teams or working on a large code base. And I know this isn't specific to PyCharm. This is a plugin that is available at other editors as well. But it is definitely one of my top plugins to use, especially at work. One more thing while we're talking about Git and PyCharm's version control, I did want to quickly touch on the built-in features that PyCharm has for Git. If we look at the top right corner of the IDE, we can see it says Git and there's a few symbols here. So if we click this check mark, it immediately opens up a commit changes window. And this is another super useful feature. Now, I've personally always used the command line when using Git to type in my commits and pushes, but PyCharm makes this so much simpler. And once you start using this, honestly, you won't go back. So up top, you see the actual files that were changed. So I just made a quick change to this one file. But if there were more files here, as you can see, there's checkbox near the file. So you can select or deselect what you want to add to the commit. Then you just type in your commit message right here, and you can visualize the diff at the bottom. Once you're done, you would just then commit and push, and that's it, you're done. So very useful, very convenient, and definitely hard to go back to the other way of doing it once you've started using this. Next up is Rainbow Brackets, and this one right here is an awesome plugin. They actually have a similar plugin that some people find pairs well with this one, which I think is called Rainbow Indent, and we'll look at that in a second. But I particularly like Rainbow Brackets. And we're going to install this real quick and just show you what it looks like. Now we're going to restart the IDE real quick. So now you can see that the parentheses, for example, within this code, they're different colors. So the yellow represents the outermost parentheses. As you can see here, we've got some green. So the deeper and deeper you go, like the more nested that you are, the more colors that you're gonna get. And so This plugin is really great for darker themes. It's especially great for code that has a heavy use of parentheses, brackets, braces, such as HTML or templating documents. For example, in this HTML file, if you look at the opening tags for these divs, you can see that they're different colors. And so the color represents how far nested within some code the particular item is. So yeah, it allows you to identify the extent and the contents of parentheses, brackets, and braces without using your cursor. So you can visually see these things, and it shows you how many nested expressions you have. For instance, if you see a specific color like purple, then you know that you've got a lot of nesting going on, and you probably need to refactor that code a little bit. So the visual cues are really great for a lot of things. So definitely check this one out, especially if you have PyCharm Pro. You can apply this to other types of files, not just Python. So last up, I want to talk about Key Promoter X. I just installed it, so I'm going to restart the IDE real quick. So the plugin has been installed, and now if you do certain things, like for example, open up the terminal, you'll see I get a little pop-up and it says Key Promoter X, command terminal missed one time. It actually lets you know what the shortcuts are for different things that you do within the IDE. So any action that you perform within the editor probably has a shortcut attached to it, right? And we know that shortcuts are a great way to increase productivity and efficiency while we're working. So I think this is an awesome plugin to check out, especially if you're not super familiar with PyCharm. So it's a tool that you'll probably use for just a few weeks, and then you won't really need it anymore. I mean, this kind of stuff does get annoying sometimes when an editor is continuously notifying you about things, but I think that it's great to have, like I said, just for a few weeks, a few days even, just to get up to speed on different shortcuts that you may not know or may not be aware of. And yeah, I think it's a really helpful tool as well, so I thought I would include it in this setup.